for the film or documentary, there is a duration limitation. Let's say it should be the 20 minutes or 100 minutes, like that.
Oh, I see. Well, like length of time.
Yeah.
We don't specify a length of time. We don't have that as a criteria. But certainly, just based on the award amounts, we do look for sort of longer than 30 minutes.
Longer.
We definitely funded hour long, which is considered kind of like a sort of short format, not necessarily a full feature. You know, and then you know, there is a range in terms of what you can request between $5,000 and $25,000. And something we do look at, and we bring up another point that I didn't mention, is the sort of commensurate request for the scope of work. So don't request $25,000 for a 3-minute short that takes place with one camera in one location, right? You know, so certainly if it's a smaller scale or a shorter form work, we could potentially entertain it if you're sort of lensing the request and therefore the budget appropriate. Okay, so as long as it makes sense, the request makes sense for the scope of the work that you're proposing, it's again, we don't articulate it has to be so many minutes. This right here.
Yes, I still have a few questions about cash matching
Sure.
and how to use the fund. So, for example, if I request $60,000 for post-production for a documentary,
But you wouldn't
so
request.
the budget,
Okay, I'm sorry.
the budget
It's
is
okay.
60,000.
Sure.
I request 25,000. Does that mean that I need to prove in the application that I have the plan or the means to secure
Absolutely.
the rest of the
Yes.
35?
Either
So-
you have it,
Okay.
which is best case scenario,
Okay.
strongest position, or you have a very cogent, thought out plan, or somewhere in the middle. You have some of it, and this is how we plan to sort of garner the rest of it.
Yeah.
Usually it's somewhere in the middle with both applications.
Okay.
So-
Yeah. Also, once the funding is released to me, does that mean I need to prove that I have the rest of the money in order to receive the funding?
Not necessarily, and actually that brings up a different point.
Yeah.
Actually, so part of being sponsored as an individual through a nonprofit that basically acts as the custodian. So that's actually what's happening by being sponsored by a 501c3 nonprofit, right? They're serving as the custodian of that grant.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like on the hook to ensure that compliance. So that's something that happens in terms of the disbursements of ultimately of the funds to you as the artist in terms of the thresholds you need towards the completion of the project.
So they will be the one who decides that
That's
you
right.
will
They
receive the
they
money.
technically can, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because ultimately the funds were made to them to shepherd them or be the custodians on our behalf towards you completing the project or completing that phase of production at the very least. I'm going to move on just to give other people chances. Christmas.
So, kind of asked to the fiscal, you said there's a vetting process that a fiscal sponsor goes through.
Right, grants gateway,
Is there
pre-qualification
is
process.
there a list of fiscal sponsors that is available on the website?
Well, we do have, I want to
Other resources?
Yes, we do have a link that you can actually review past funded organizations, and you can do sort of the most recent year, and usually they're pre-qualified. So that's one way to sort of see in terms of who's done business with New York State Council on Guns. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, sir, your glasses there.
You responded to my question about media work, about a project within a media work. But I was actually really interested in hearing about how a proposal would be used with the media work within the context of a larger project.
Okay, similar to the way I articulated my response here. The media work needs to be integral in the presentation of the proposed piece, whatever that is. If it's in service of another art form, it's not a priority. It will not fare well. So is that clarified?
Yes, thank you.
Sir with the glasses.
As long as the artist is a New York State resident, does it matter if fiscal sponsor or the location of the work is in
Okay.
New York State?
Well, we don't fund travel, especially outside of the state, out-of-state travel. We also don't fund equipment purchases. Just keep that in mind. 'Cause technically, we would own it, and we're not going to sort of.
So if you-
So what happens is if it's an international, like I'm giving this as an example, if it's an international piece, that, especially a documentary that's covering something happening in India, making this up, not funded for production because those expenses are really happening out of state. But in post-production, when the post-production is happening here with the New York-based team that's part of that project, then we can get the money.
Okay.
So you want to be mindful if it's sort of a project that has locations and activity happening outside of the state of New York to get it done, that you're applying in a phase where we can have qualified expenses happening out of New York.
Does it matter if some are in New York and some are outside New York?
No, that's fine.
You would just be able to fund
That's
those.
right, because there's a match, right, so our funds go toward those expenses, not other expenses.
Okay.
And you would articulate that in your application in terms of how you use our funds specifically.
And the fiscal sponsor, does that have to be in New York too?
The fiscal sponsor must be a Grants Gateway pre-qualified entity. And what I mean by that, it can be out of state, but that means that an out-of-state entity needs to file specific paperwork to do business in the state of New York, and then go through the pre-qualification process. Okay, now, if they're not already pre-qualified, just given our timeline for our deadline at this point, an initial pre-qualification might take weeks. So that's why, at this juncture especially, you want to really work with a sponsor that already does business with the state of New York, certainly NISCA, because they already have all the credentials for the portals, and they know how to sort of, they'll be able to best shepherd your request with the grant portals that they have to track. Okay. Yes, Ms.
If you received grants in 2019 and for a project, and you want to further develop it, can you also apply for 2020?
Well,
It's not from this, it was another organization.
so it was funded by some other organization?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
It would be a first-time applicant to us.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
This was not.
Through a fiscal sponsor.
Okay.
So if you're the lead artist, you work with a fiscal sponsor, and you would speak to that funding to help get it to where it is now, towards where you want it to be as part of our application. So that's very good. So, any other questions? Yes, sir, let's start.
Do you work with the mayor's office of Motion Picture Entertainment? Like,
No.
they see that you've given us a grant, or they're like, oh, wow, that's great, here's more.
I don't even know the folks in that office, unfortunately, and they don't know us. It's a little different, and the priorities are a little different. I mean, they tend to be more on the production side of things in terms of providing services related to location access, permits, stuff like that. And we're and the other thing is we deal with the state of New York, so we're funding. A lot of them come from the 5 boroughs. A lot of our applicants, but we do business with artists throughout the state, all 62 counties. So the relationship sort of is just we know of each other basically at best, and we will refer. If an applicant has a different group, like if you were looking for location to something, I would refer you to them, for example. Okay. Yes, Miss. Yes.
Sorry. So for the online application, CSA, so that's the part that the fiscal sponsor will be dealing with?
Correct.
Okay.
You do not get passwords, usernames. You do not create a
Okay.
profile. It's for organizations.
Okay. So can I ask one?
Okay. One more question.
Okay.
Only if somebody else has an option.
So I still have a few questions about how to spend the
One
money. Okay.
And then we'll get back to you.
So our film has a narrative part too, besides a documentary part. So
Sure.
if we got the funding for the post-production, but we're still working on the narrative part, can we use the funding for the production of the narrative part?
Probably that would not be a compelling application.
Okay.
You want it to fit the phase of production and the project. So it's almost like saying you're applying with one film to then use the money in a different phase for a different part of the film. It's
So
not.
it has to be like definite, like very.
You'd like it to sync up so it'll just really help the panel make better sense
Okay.
of what you're trying to accomplish. Question in the back, sir, standing in the back.
Yeah, toward the beginning of your presentation, you discussed 3 distinct goals of NISCA, things that their mission, I guess.
Well, not NISCA, but this is for the category,
This category, okay.
or the program,
Yeah.
the individual arts
Just-
program.
Okay, that's for this program. Could you discuss the relationship between NISCA's goals and what you expect to see in narrative, what the descriptions of these projects? Is there a direct relationship between the goals of the program and the projects that are likely to succeed?
So in every case, I mean, with the individual artist program, the crux is the creation of new work. And the more novel the approach is towards the creation of that new work, that tends to be the kinds of projects that in our categories, especially the media categories specifically, the panel tends to rally around. So this idea of sort of providing the kind of funding that maybe an outlayer filmmaker or media maker might be hard pressed to find from other sources. And in a way, and so how does that fulfill our overall mission is this idea of basically ensuring that we are the arts and cultural capital of the country, if not the world, by invigorating and infusing these sort of opportunities, financial opportunities for these creative artists to finish their work. And for us, I mean, we were at a information session yesterday when we were in the movies, and there were two different artists. One was a team, and then another gentleman that represent different projects that got funding from us. And in both cases, they're like, thank you so much. I was able to, it came at the last minute. I was able to finish it. This one project was, we screened at MoMA, and then we've been 35 film festivals internationally. And that's the New York State brand in terms of artists being seen sort of successfully, doing their art and cultural work, not just here in New York State, but, in this case, internationally. So in that way, it kind of feeds into the overall mission in this game, for sure. So, wow, Iraq. You gotta ask that question. Yes, miss.
Yes, if you were applying for a theater commission for a director,
Yes.
who would develop a show, say in workshop with two other actors?
Sure.
So the two other actors would be the collaborators. Would you have to address how you're going to pay the actors in this particular?
Nope.
You
Nope,
don't.
it's
Okay.
not a production
Okay.
grant.
Okay.
It is a creative fee for that director to take the time to work with the actors and the designers
Okay.
to sort of get it ready to open in that case.
Terrific.
Which is a little different than the playwright, where it's really to take the time to write the play before the director gets involved, typically, right?
Okay.
Okay, and they're both within the same category. Your question? Okay. Yes, miss.
So you said the funding can be used to buy equipment?
Correct. It can be for like disposable equipment. So like light bulbs, stuff that wears out, small equipment.
Like cameras?
Tails, no, anything that has appreciation.
Okay.
What happens is, if you did use the funds to buy that,
Yeah.
it's technically the property of the state of New York.
Oh.
And we don't have a place to house equipment and
Okay.
manage it.
Okay.
So the rental of equipment
Yeah.
and artist fees relating to your collaborators and yourself, that's very good.
Rental is fine.
Rental is fine, yeah.
Okay. So, but it can also
Consumables, I'm sorry, the word I was thinking is consumables.
be. Okay.
Those are okay.
But we need to list it on the expenses, like our expenses on the budget, like our funding used to.
can match.
Money to.
Yeah, so if you're using a different source that's part of your overall cash match
Yeah.
and the overall cost of the project, to buy and purchase, that's fine, as long as you're clear that should you get the grant. A good application will indicate in the budget narrative response, as part of the response, should I get the grant, of all the expenses I've articulated, this is where the funds would go.
Okay.
And then you want to ensure that that articulation coincides with what we call qualified expenses. Okay, good question. Anyone else?
Where would design come in for the theater commission?
Your classic lighting design, set design, costume design.
Sound
Those are
design.
the three classic.
And/or sound.
So, and sound design. It's fair. Again, in that case, the difference is instead of like in media, that it's integral, the designs and the theater commissions are in support of the play. This is a theater commission.
And that is a category within the commission?
That is it. So within, no, what it is it's an area of support within the category of theater commission. So we have theater commission as the category, and then within that we support playwrights, designers, directors, solo artists, librettists, and performance artists.
So those are the boxes that would be checked.
You would check, you self-select which one, But you want to be clear, because then the support materials, once you check designer, we ask for certain support materials, it's different from playwright, which is different from when you check off director. In that category, but it's the same category. In the back, miss.
Does composer fall into that category as well, as a theater?
It's the same construct. And it's, again, the creative time, it's actually more, in composer is actually more clear cut, because in every case, it's to create or devise the score. And again, when I say score, I don't mean an actual score, because some composers don't work with the traditional score format, but this idea of conceiving the work in terms of notes or notes of, or an outline that will then get performed. Okay, so it's actually even more clear cut for the composer composition. Okay. Yes, sir.
What about photography, soundscape installation?
So that's for a game, particularly under the soundscape.
I'm sorry, what?
The soundscape.
No, wait, it's more of a photography installation.
Again, we wouldn't fund the photography. Static media is not something that the media category. It's time-based and sound media.
What if it's a visual?
So if the visual element is static and it's photographic in nature, but there's a soundscape that's integral to the overall presentation, that can be for game. But if it's simply in support of the static images, that would be not a
So
priority.
half and half.
That would be less of a priority. So it's, I would have to know more details. If you say it's literally half and half, it might be interesting. Okay. But generally, if it's in support of the other art form, it tends to be less competitive. It's not a priority. We call that a low priority. So they become less competitive. Mr. Glasses? Okay. All right, so when it comes to the media category, most of these categories, it doesn't matter if the organization is like a media organization to serve as a business sponsor. So we look at the sponsoring organization providing a service on behalf of the individual artists. Because ultimately the application is reviewed and evaluated based on the artist credentials, not the organizations. Dance is a little different. That's the one category that's more tied to the organization. But the other one's not so much necessarily. So with the other commissions like composer and theater, oftentimes the organization is producing the play that they're proposing the director or the playwright. Ultimately, they're looking to produce the play perhaps of this new piece that they want to commission the playwright to write. But we also entertain what we call artist-initiated requests in the commission categories, that the artist is acting as a self-producer, perhaps. And again, we're not covering the production cost, but their fee for the creative time for that element that they're coming in for. Okay. The question in the back.
So there doesn't need to be a commitment from a company to produce the work?
Like, for example, the composer composition, right. So in that case, if it's not tied to an organization, it's an artist-initiated request, and that can certainly apply. You would want to articulate your plans to producing it eventually, even though we're not funding that, and what that might look like. But it can be self-produced. Okay, it's not, you don't have to be sort of tied to an entity that's agreed to produce. So we're going to move on and leave more room for questions to the actual sponsor request form, so you can just see how it actually looks like. So in the sample, the difference is we provided like the 2-page summary budget, one for each category, because there's different scenarios. But in the actual form, it's just one. And it's, again, it's a printable PDF. And this, as you can see, there's income at the top. And this is where you have earned income, contributed income. These are just different ways of articulating the kind of income that's coming to bear. And again, you would compose this in terms of actual and projected, depending on where you are, right? And then these are, and again, for expenses, same idea, actual and projected. Okay. And ultimately, you want to have enough expenses that reflects, at the very least, the request amount you're asking for. So if you don't, that's like saying you raise enough money, you don't need our money. So this is what happens in this project budget. You want to articulate enough expenses that there's a deficit after all the income that accounts for the request that you're asking for. Okay, and the sample shows that for the media project especially. Okay. And then so ultimately the surplus after NISCA would be zero because it balances out in the project budget. budget notes, okay, and this is where we get a lot of questions on this. Budget notes here, notice directly after the summary budget. This is a space where you're allowed to sort of further clarify some of the items that you might have bumped above. So if you could scroll up a little more, I just want to give a quick example. So, for example, you might have remaining operating expense, which is very nebulous, $10,000. And in the budget notes, you can say ROE equals, $2,000 in insurance, $3,000 in craft services, stuff that you wouldn't bundle anywhere else. And that's how you use the project budget.
Budget notes.
Notes section right here. Okay, so it doesn't even have to be full sentences here. You're really sort of further clarifying elements of both the income and the expense side that you can bundle into this very summary budget. So as you scroll down, you'll see that the actual sponsor request form has all 4 categories worth of questions are here. So you just, again, don't try to break the PDF, don't try to sort of scan it or anything like that. Just fill it out, save it, and then you just scroll to the category you're applying to. So if you're applying to theater, you'll stop at the theater category. And if you're applying to media, you'll scroll all the way down to the media category. And then I just want to go over the different items to further clarify where some of the information comes from. So the media is all the way at the bottom. Did you have that one? So the theater, that was dance. Those are commissions first. Theater, dance, theater. And after that, we get into and for every section, we repeat the kind of supplemental materials that we want from you. So it's all right there in one place. So on this form, so here we are, media. No media is not. They're very similar for depending on the other categories. Fiscal sponsor is whoever's sponsoring you. Make sure they match. So if your fiscal sponsor is NIPA, don't put a different organization here. Make sure they match. Artist name is the lead artist, even if it's a team. Just whoever the lead artist that's agreed to be the lead artist on record for the application is the artist's name. Project title, pretty self-explanatory, the title of the project. You want to keep the same title name throughout any references. And here you have drop-down lists for project genre. Again, self-selected, you select. You talk about what we expect, but you self-select. And then which phase of production. So once again, you self-select. And then the one piece of information that you'll need from your fiscal sponsor is a CFA app number. So when they go to create your application, it creates a CFA number. And that they will give to you that you will plug in here before you give all the material out. They might collect this and then plug it in for you. That's between you and the fiscal sponsor, whatever is easy. But just so you know, you don't have access to that until you get it from the fiscal sponsor. And then here are the actual questions. These are text boxes. You can go in, you can type.
2,000 characters.
2,000 characters per text box. We have sort of clarifying notes on how we are looking for you to answer a specific question. And that's true of all the categories. And then the rest of the just scrolling down to the end. I just want to show, and this is true at the end of every category, we once again show like the kind of support material we're looking for. So at the end of the day, as a good sponsored artist, you want to fill this out to the best of your abilities, and then you want to package, save it, already filled out, and that becomes your first upload that you're going to submit to your fiscal sponsor, and then provide the other documents that create your application package. Okay? Typically in the form of a PDF. Yes, sir. Eugene in the back.
In what format can we upload works in progress and other samples?
So the media work samples, what you do is you create you provide the link, so you're responsible for housing it somewhere. It could be Vimeo, YouTube, it could be a website, you post the sample in. So ultimately, you as the artist, you have to sort of house it somewhere, and you create a links page where you list the link to where we click on it to go to the media sample. And on that links page, you want to put the details of the title of it, some description, and so in terms of what we're seeing that relates to the application should be the same. And then any instructions for viewing. And like I said before, you can either cut the link to our timestamp specifications, or you can provide a longer sort of link and then give us instructions to where in the link to view it from what minute to what minute. And that's how you provide the media work sample. Okay, so is everyone, that's a very good point. Is everyone clear on that? You don't provide a media file to your sponsor. You have to house it somewhere and provide a link that gives us access to it.
So is that links page is?
It's a PDF that you create. There's no form, you create it. And you can name it links page.
Did you want to go over this?
So the next one, so there's the media links page, there's the proof of residency document, right? So there's the sponsor request form, filled out, completed, the proof of residency document with 2 items as part of the same multi-page document, right? The number 3 is the links page, and that's criteria like what to provide. Number 4, your resume of yourself as the lead artist, as well as your key collaborators. We ask no more than 2 pages per person, ideally no more than 5. Okay, I think that tends to present a full picture at that point. And then the other 5 and 6 are sort of conditional, or depending on which area of media making you're applying for, what type of activity, other kinds of support materials to provide in terms of static support. Notice we don't ask for things like letters of support. We don't ask for marketing pieces or stories on you or reviews, for example. So if we're not asking for it, don't provide it. Just we're not going to look at it. So you just stick to the sort of items and the kinds of items we're asking for. All right. So that really concludes sort of the full package in time. So I'm going to need more questions. This is your time, ladies and gentlemen. The lightning round. I'm going to start here and work my way back. Sir.
I also have a lot of questions as well, so one. So for the theater commissioning budget, do I understand the budget, the total expense is the commission? We don't need to show the budget for the whole.
We didn't get into that. We spent all this time on the media budgets, which are our actual production budget of some sort. But the commission budget is as easy as it gets. Because unless you're subsidizing more than the request amount as part of the fee, it's literally, for example, and assuming that the sponsor organization is going to take their administrative fee, it's outside expenses, which is the commission fee, $9,500. Other expenses, which is the administrative fee, $500, equals $10,000, and the request is $10,000, zero.
You know, there's
no other income?
Yeah.
Exactly. And in the sample, we have scenarios like that for the different commissions.
Right.
So, good point on that. You don't want to see a production budget for the commission request. It's about the creative fee that we fund up to 100%, up to $10,000. Beyond that, then you would show where the other additional money might be coming from. In the back, take this from.
The question I had is, so let's say you here today, we got a lot of information, but then we're filling it out, and we got more questions.
More questions than we got. Let's go back to. Let's go back to our summary page, our program summary page.
Who would we go to? Would we?
I'm going to tell you right now.
The official sponsor? Do we call you?
If it's mechanical questions about what to supply and paperwork to supply, you probably want to talk to your fiscal sponsor. But if it's about germane to how do I answer this question, I don't know what kind of work sample it should be. Not how to supply the work sample. I don't know what kind of work sample it should be. You can call us, and here we are. You can see our direct lines. They're not 800 numbers, these are direct lines. The phone's right there in front of me. And our emails. Email is probably the most efficient. And especially if it's quick, like, what's the word count? What's the word count? Something really technical that you might not be familiar with. But certainly you can ask them a longer question, and my suggestion is leave your phone number, because if it's like, if I feel like, or we feel like it's too long to just email back, we'll just call it. So if you just provide the phone number and your initial email inquiry, that's fine. But you can call too, and leave a message and we get back to you. My suggestion is call Orange Chain first. I'm kidding.
Or email me.
Or email them first. Call me second. No, I'm kidding. Again, the one thing I would say, as director of program, I tend to get most of the calls, and I will, as needed, just ferret it out to the other associates or the program officers to sort of assist if it's too much talking. But I think we've been turning it around within 48 hours. So do not wait till the last minute. And by way of just expectations and managing expectations, the last week before the 28th deadline, don't come, we cannot guarantee that we'll get back to you in time. So by March 21st, when the deadline is March 28th, the last 7 days, we can't guarantee we'll get back to you in time.
And your fiscal sponsor has a deadline.
Usually the fiscal sponsor has a deadline before that anyway, but just keep that in mind. Sir.
If your fiscal sponsor missed a year or more in the grant gateway pre-qualification, do they have to make up for the past years, or will it be just for the current year?
Yeah, you kind of get into, you have to return to pre-qualification status. So it's not like you make up, you just provide what you need to get back. What's important to note is to be able to count as an application, the fiscal sponsor or any applicant in this, including a sponsor, a sponsoring organization, needs to be in pre-qualification status by the application deadline. If you're not, that request, even though it was properly submitted, will be deemed ineligible. So that's the key element to remember.
So if they have pre-qualified for prior years,
Well, they already have an account, it should be a much easier to get back into pre-qualification. It's not an initial pre-qualification. That's usually pretty quick, a couple of days, 3 days, unless there's some issue. So that would be a question of, we have pre-qualification specialists that are constantly putting people back in pre-qual status. What's back here, and then I'll come this way.
So one is, let's say if our team like save up all the other income sources, then we still will keep that 30% cap. Can we save up like earn salary?
So self-funding, if you have it in hand, that's akin to, in nonprofit speak, personal donation. So that's cash in hand. That is a source of income. If you're marshaling $10,000 from your checkbook towards the creation of this project, that is cash in hand. Okay, so that's fair game. Yes.
And also for the first column, earned income, does a donated space consider as other revenue?
No. Donated spaces is in kind. So if there's no cash exchange, it's not part of the line item income budget. Project budget. That would be below that. You can speak to that in your budget narrative questions in terms of all the additional in-kind support you're receiving. So this is what happens, especially in the media category. This isn't a whole lot of commissions the same way, but in the media category, say you have a, you're asking for $25,000. You have a $50,000 total cash expenses, and it's a full feature. And the panel might be like, wait a minute, there's no way they can really realistically get this for $50,000 total, of which 25 we're going to support. But you articulate how there's another $50,000 in in-kind support in the variety of ways that are coming to bear on that. Then the panel says, that's how they're getting it done for that amount of money. Okay, but it's not in the budget. You're not assigning dollar amounts as part of your match budget because there's no funds were exchanged for the service. Okay, is that another way of describing it? Yes, sir.
You don't put the in-kind in that budget?
No. You can speak to it in the, as it comes to bear, up and above beyond the actual cash that's being expended, but it's not part of that budget. Yes, sir.
So apologies if I missed this, but when you first started presenting and when I first started looking at the application, it seems like the first part of the application is really for the fiscal sponsor, is that right? There is a section that...
Oh, the standard questions.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's really if the fiscal sponsor
That's right.
just ignore those.
You ignore those,
Right,
correct.
okay.
That's their information, because We used to have a separate registration step, and now we're collecting it all, which pertains to organizational information, and we're just collecting it all in one place now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you wanna, and notice it doesn't come up here in the actual sort of, your actual sponsor request form. It's not a
Yeah,
question.
right. It's before the sponsored request form, and we ignore it.
So when they initially create the application to provide that CFA application number,
Yeah.
that's when they're answering those questions.
Okay.
Good question, yeah. Yes, Mr. Back.
Do some fiscal sponsors have a greater rate of success than others, and is there a way to find out if?
You can find out how many sponsored artists got funded from a specific organization by looking at our what's it called,
Oh, the search,
our
past completed grants?
past funded search engine, I'm sorry, past funded search engine. And that only really shows not who applied, but who received funding in a given year. So we can go to that
It
now.
shows the sponsor.
Yeah, it's by the sponsor.
So you
Oh, I
can,
see, okay.
you go to individual artists to get to this information, and you pick the specific year, which last year is the most recent year, so you get a benchmark, right? And notice how you have the sponsoring organizations there listed. And as you scroll down, I think they're in alpha order. You'll see in some cases, and you see, for example, how many they got.
The composer commission here.
And you can see the detail there in terms of what it was. So this is all public information. It's available to anyone.
Great, thank you.
And this is another way, for those that asked earlier, to see, who's already pre-qualified. This is one way of kind of, they map out, and odds are, if they got a grant last year, they're pre-qualified, right? Because they're doing business with an actor. So that's another way of seeing potential sponsoring organizations that you might want to engage with and reach out to your fiscal sponsor. It's another way to get to that information. So how do we get to that?
You can download it too.
Right, and you can create an Excel spreadsheet. So there's a little tab right there. Yes, Ms.
So I just want to be absolutely sure that I understood.
Sure.
Because I applied with the project and the budget was full of in-kind contribution. So that was completely wrong.
It was.
So no, I.
Oh, right, you self-reported, so that's, yeah.
And is there a percentage that I have to approve? You talk about.
No, we don't prescribe percentage of cash match that needs to be in hand. But like I said, the more in hand there is as part of the application, or the more cogent your fundraising plan is, and realistic, the more competitive it is.
Because I thought that the impact was maybe competitive, I didn't know.
As far as I know. Yeah, correct.
No, but that being said, that's why you certainly should speak to your in-kind efforts and inputs in the budget narrative response.
Right. But not in the budget.
But not in the actual line item budget,
Right.
because there's no cash being expended for that service. Okay, it's a cash budget. Yes, Miss.
Question, if I were applying to self-produce or in the self-production sort of modality as a director, and I did not get the grant, could another organization next year commission me for the same project?
You would have to sit out a year as the lead
I
artist.
would have to sit out.
The
a year.
lead artist is what's, not the organization,
The
the lead
project.
artist sits out a
I
year.
see, okay.
So it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, okay, thank you.
Yes,
One
Miss.
more question.
Sure.
I would like to reapply, it's the very same project, and obviously people didn't develop.
Understood.
So there is no restriction, right? I can apply, obviously.
Well, if you applied last year, we do have a.
No, it was 2 years.
Yeah, then you can come back, even if it's the same project.
I did not receive any.
Right, as long as it hasn't been funded, you can come back with the same project to compete again. Sure. Yes, sir.
So there was something about what kind of Adobe or PDF you can do and you can't, some other kind of PDF you're not supposed to do. I just want to make sure I don't.
So at the top, we have some notes that we've had issues with our fillable PDF not being read properly for folks that are using Firefox browser to open it, to try to then interact with it. That's
Okay.
what that's about.
So just Firefox is the problem.
So it's from, as far as.
Yeah, okay, but I don't have to worry and look at my PDF to make sure it's the right kind, if I'm not on Firefox.
That's right. If you have a standard PDF reader, it should open it and you should be able to fill it in.
But I have something a little better where I can make PDFs. So.
That can work too, but don't try to break it. or-
Okay, but as long as it seems to be working, it should be fine.
It should be
right?
fine, yeah. And, you know, that issue has been less of an issue
Okay.
over time. But we just keep it as a note so people don't,
Yeah, okay,
get nervous about it.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
I know you've answered this question, but I'm a little confused on the theater commission sample. You're actually saying, so if one is applying for the commission, you're actually just putting the artistic fee
Correct.
in this?
Because that's what we're funding. These are not production requests in the commission category. So it's the fee to take a creative time to develop that work as a playwright, as a director, whatever.
But if you had expenses too in order to get there, like to test a certain, piece of material
So
or
the-
set element,
Yeah,
that
we-
you might have to rent a studio.
We're not brokering those expenses as part of the commission. Now, once you receive the commission fee, the lead artist, how they deploy those funds, that's not, we don't broker that. The spirit of it is for you to take the creative time, that's your fee for your time to develop the work, irrespective of additional expenses. So if you're self-producing, you might use those funds in that way, but it's not part of the application or accounting for it, because, if you were hired by a production company, right, a theater company, they would handle those fees. See what I mean? So we separate the production of it from the creative fee of devising it. And that's the point of these commission grants specifically. Good question. Yes, Ms. in the back.
You might have addressed this already, and I apologize.
It's okay.
If you make a request for, say, 15,000, and NISCA determines that that's more than they would want to fund a project, would they offer less if they think it's a viable project? Or is it really important to try to target what you think?
So, good, that's a pretty good question. So when you say 15,000, that's what category? Yes.
For creative fee, and for individual.
All right, so we don't ask, so the max you can ask for is 10,000.
Well, there you go.
Right. So there you go. Right. Sometimes, yes, sometimes in order to fund more artists, we may allocate less than the full amount requested towards the project. Okay, and that's part of the panel deliberations. If there's still interest, just not as much, or there's a number of really viable projects, but we don't have enough funds to fully fund all of them, typically what happens is we'll structure where the highest rated projects might get 100% of the request amount, and then the next sort of section of less rated projects might get 80 or 90%. Because in the last several years, we've been funding at least 80% to 100%. So I've been using a rubric of really trying to fully fund those artists that receive funding versus funding more artists at less amounts, lower amounts. So, and again, it's hard for me to determine that ahead of time, because if there's more volume, I have to adjust that rubric to make some sense out of how many applicants, how many of them are receiving funding.
And is there a quota in various categories, for example?
No. No. Each category is deliberated on. Each category receives funding because each category is allotted a budget. Okay, but there's no quota to like how many. And we have different. We don't control how many requests come in too. That's the other. Yes.
What's the interface? What role does IND play in relationship to the other programs? Like how, in terms of the application and the application process, from the moment of application to panel review, how are you interacting with the other programs?
Well, each program convenes their own set of panels to deliberate on those applications that apply to that program. So we're not interfacing directly in that way.
So you're like a clearing.
So no, like each program convenes their own panel, their own set of peer panels to deliberate on the requests. So for the IND theater commissions, I convene a specific peer panel of artist theater folk to deliberate on that group of applications. For the composer commissions, it's a different panel of music, of folks with a music background, to serve as the peer panelists to deliberate on those requests.
Wait, I'm confused. the first example, you're convening on a.
In every case, we convene a peer panel
When
that's
you say
germane to that
convene,
category.
what do you mean, what does that mean?
I'm sorry?
What do you mean by convene?
We convene, we actually have face-to-face peer panels that get invited to sit and deliberate on each application for that category.
You pull the panel
We
together,
pull the panel together.
and you sit on that panel.
Well, we run the panels as staff.
So, and the difference.
Well, I'm not the panelist, I convene.
I understand.
Okay.
The difference, but the difference between the composer panel is that
The composer panel is made up of artists who are composers from the music field. The theater panel is made up of artists who are theater artists from the theatrical field. In some cases, if they do both, they might convene on one or the other.
so what is I&D? Like, what is an I&D?
I&D panel, unlike our other programs, funds individual art makers, as opposed to organizations who provide arts and cultural programs. So the theater program panel is deliberating on theater companies who are applying for their season for support.
So they're completely different panels.
Correct. That is
There,
correct.
is there overlap at all?
Sometimes there is, yes, yes.
Okay, so I want to further develop a work that I have currently, so I can apply for the commission and just deal with the commission and then for the fiscal funds.
What category specifically?
I'm sorry, theater, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Individual artists in theater.
so what's the role that you're looking to commission? A playwright, a director,
Playwright.
the playwright? So,
Right.
okay, in the case of a playwright, it would be to commission something that hasn't been written yet. So if it's already been written, it's, because remember, we fund new work in our categories.
If it's further development, like the piece, I'm a playwright and also the artist performer. So the piece
So that's
is like,
a solo artist, all right?
okay, so the piece is like 50 minutes. So I'm going to expand the piece to 90 minutes.
All right, so that gets into using source material to create a new work.
Okay.
Okay, and in that case, you do want to be very clear that you're just not continuing existing work, but rather that there's impactful enough difference to constitute new work with this new conception that's based on the source material. That's the way we would approach that. But if it's more of the same, yeah, it won't work. But if there's enough difference, then it could be. So that's fine. Okay, I'm getting the, stopping to time. I got 3 minutes going into it.
Do you have announcements or?
Someone hasn't asked a question. Has anyone not asked a question? Sir, you have not asked a question. Sit there, look at that.
Okay, now in the theater,
Yes.
solo artists as opposed to did I see that there was something called solo artists?
Yeah, that is.
What does that entail exactly?
Well, the difference there is usually that the solo artist is the writer and performer. So that's basically the difference.
Okay, and what would I need to show? Something that's, can I show a work in progress?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
In all cases, you can.
Okay.
Again, it gets tricky because we're doing new work. So
Right.
if it's very early in development or it's a work in progress, you know, when we say work in progress, when it comes to the theater commissions or the other commissions, if it's source material for the further development of something that's wholly new and conceived, that's fine. But if it's already has some kind of history and track record, it becomes less competitive.
Right.
Okay, so we want to be like the first ones in the creative process in the commission categories especially. Unlike media, we have pre-production, production, and post-production, where it's kind of been happening. Okay, so that's another fine point. All right, I thank you all so much.
Thank you.